Your soulmate is hurt after learning this truth about you. My beloved child. Your soulmate just discovered something about you that they never expected to be true, and for a long moment, they couldn't speak. It wasn't because they stopped caring. It was because everything they believed about you suddenly shifted beneath their feet. Their heart wanted to reject what they had learned, yet every small piece of evidence seemed to point in the same direction. But here's the part no one else knows. The truth they uncovered wasn't the full story. It was only one side of a much deeper picture, and the conclusion they reached may change everything unless someone finally uncovers what really happened. Don't skip. One quiet misunderstanding has already begun to grow into something far more painful than either of you realizes, and the next decision your soulmate makes could determine whether this connection becomes stronger, or slips away before either of you has the chance to explain. As the hours passed, your soulmate kept replaying old conversations in their mind, searching for signs they had somehow missed. Suddenly, ordinary memories felt different. A delayed reply. A sentence left unfinished. A smile that now seemed to carry another meaning. The truth they had learned started weaving itself into every memory, making the past appear completely different from how they once remembered it. Yet something refused to make sense. Deep inside, their heart kept whispering that the person they cared about couldn't possibly be exactly as this new information suggested. That inner conflict became impossible to ignore. They wanted answers, but they were also afraid of what those answers might reveal. Stay till the end, because the next clue doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from someone who unknowingly witnessed a moment that your soulmate has never told anyone about, and that forgotten moment could overturn everything they currently believe. Late that evening, an unexpected conversation changed the direction of their thoughts. Without realizing it, someone mentioned a small detail that didn't fit the version of events your soulmate had accepted. It was subtle. Easy to overlook. Yet it opened a question too important to ignore. What if the painful truth they believed wasn't actually the truth at all? Suddenly, doubt replaced certainty. Instead of feeling betrayed, they began wondering whether you had been carrying a burden you never found the words to explain. Every answer uncovered another mystery, every emotion pulled them in a different direction, and for the first time since learning that heartbreaking secret, hope quietly returned alongside the pain. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has now decided to search for one final piece of evidence, and what they find next may force them to make a choice they never imagined they would have to face. A restless night brought no peace, only more questions. Your soulmate couldn't silence the feeling that someone, or something, had carefully shaped the story they had been told. Every time they tried to accept the painful version of the truth, another memory surfaced that refused to fit. They remembered a look in your eyes that wasn't guilt, it was exhaustion. They remembered moments when you almost spoke, then suddenly changed the subject as if protecting someone else from the weight you carried. That realization unsettled them even more. If you had truly wanted to deceive them, why were there so many chances to walk away that you never took? The deeper they looked, the more impossible it became to ignore the possibility that the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. Don't skip, because the next discovery isn't found in words, it's hidden inside a choice you made long before your soulmate understood its meaning. The following day, something unexpected happened. A conversation your soulmate wasn't even supposed to hear drifted into their ears, and a single sentence froze them in place. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it quietly shattered the story they had believed. Someone admitted that they had never seen the complete picture and had made assumptions that spread from one person to another until they became accepted as fact. Your soulmate felt their heartbeat race. Had they been hurting over something that was never fully true? The thought filled them with regret. Every harsh conclusion they had reached suddenly felt heavier than before. Instead of anger, they now felt the weight of missed opportunities, the conversations they avoided, the questions they never asked, and the trust they almost abandoned without giving you the chance to explain. As those emotions settled, your soulmate made a silent promise to themselves. They would stop listening to half-finished stories and begin searching for answers directly from the only person who truly mattered, you. But just as they gathered the courage to take that first step, another unexpected detail surfaced, one that no one had mentioned before. It wasn't about what you had done, it was about what you had sacrificed without expecting anyone to notice. The moment they uncovered that hidden sacrifice, everything they thought they knew began to collapse. Yet one final mystery still remained unanswered. Why had you chosen to keep such an important truth hidden, even if it meant allowing your soulmate to misunderstand you? The answer to that question is closer than either of you realizes, and it has the power to change both hearts forever. The silence between you suddenly felt different. It was no longer filled with distance, it was filled with anticipation. Your soulmate could no longer ignore the growing feeling that every unanswered question pointed toward a truth far more emotional than they had imagined. They began looking back at the moments when you quietly stepped away instead of defending yourself. At the time, they believed you simply didn't care enough to explain. But now those same moments carried an entirely different meaning. What if your silence had never been indifference? What if it had been the kind of sacrifice that leaves a person misunderstood because protecting someone else's peace mattered more than protecting their own reputation? That possibility settled deep within your soulmate's heart, refusing to let go. Stay till the end, because the next discovery will force them to question everything they once believed about your intentions. Determined to uncover the whole story, your soulmate returned to a place connected to one of your last meaningful conversations together. They weren't searching for memories anymore, they were searching for proof. What they found wasn't a dramatic confession or a hidden message. It was something much quieter, yet infinitely more powerful. They realized that every important decision you had made followed the same pattern. Whenever life placed your happiness against someone else's well-being, you consistently chose the harder path. Suddenly, the painful truth they had learned no longer looked like selfishness. It looked like selflessness that had been misunderstood. Their heart ached with a new kind of pain, the pain of realizing they may have judged someone they deeply cared about before knowing the full story. Something huge is waiting for you, because one final missing piece still refuses to reveal itself. Then came the moment neither of you could have predicted. Someone unexpectedly stepped forward with information they had kept hidden for far too long. They admitted they had witnessed the beginning of the misunderstanding but stayed silent because they believed it would resolve itself over time. Instead, that silence allowed confusion to grow stronger until it reached your soulmate's heart. Hearing those words left them speechless. Regret washed over them, but so did determination. They no longer wanted assumptions. They wanted the truth directly from you, no matter how difficult that conversation might be. Yet just as they prepared to reach out, they discovered one final detail, something connected to a promise you made long ago that you have never broken. And once your soulmate learns why that promise still controls your choices today, they may finally understand that the truth which hurt them was actually the greatest proof of how deeply you cared. The closer your soulmate came to that forgotten promise, the more they realized they had been searching in the wrong direction all along. They had spent so much time asking, "Why did this happen to me?" that they never stopped to ask, "What were you trying to protect?" That single change in perspective transformed everything. Old conversations began echoing in their mind with new meaning. The hesitation in your voice. The careful way you chose your words. The moments when you almost revealed everything but quietly held back. None of it looked like dishonesty anymore. It looked like someone carrying a responsibility too heavy to place on another heart. For the first time since this painful journey began, your soulmate felt something stronger than heartbreak: understanding. But understanding alone wasn't enough. They still needed to know what had made you accept being misunderstood instead of telling the truth. That answer arrived in the most unexpected way. While sorting through memories they had nearly forgotten, your soulmate remembered a quiet conversation from long ago. At the time, it seemed ordinary. Now, every word carried extraordinary weight. You had once said that some truths don't hurt because they're spoken, they hurt because of the timing. Back then, your soulmate didn't understand what you meant. Now those words felt almost like a message left behind for this very moment. They realized you had been waiting for the right time, hoping circumstances would change before revealing everything. Instead, time had allowed assumptions to grow louder than reality. Their heart tightened with regret, wondering how many chances had slipped away simply because neither of you knew how to bridge the silence. Don't skip, because what happens next will reveal whether that silence can finally be broken. Just as your soulmate decided they would no longer let fear control their next step, another unexpected truth surfaced. It wasn't about the past, it was about the present. Someone revealed that you had never truly stopped thinking about this connection, even during the longest periods of silence. You had simply convinced yourself that reaching out would only reopen old wounds. Hearing that changed everything. The distance between you suddenly felt less like an ending and more like two people standing on opposite sides of the same door, each believing the other no longer wished to enter. With renewed determination, your soulmate prepared to make the first move at last. But before they could, they uncovered one final secret that had remained hidden from both of you, a secret that explains why your paths kept crossing, yet your hearts never seemed to meet at the same moment. That revelation is about to change everything once again. It began with a coincidence that no longer felt like a coincidence at all. Your soulmate noticed a pattern they had overlooked for far too long. Every time life seemed to pull the two of you apart, something unexpected always found a way to bring your paths close again. A familiar place. A familiar song. A conversation that somehow circled back to your name. At first, they dismissed these moments as chance. Now they couldn't. They started wondering if every near encounter had been another opportunity that neither of you recognized because you were both carrying the weight of unanswered questions. The truth that once caused so much pain was slowly losing its power, replaced by a much deeper realization that misunderstandings can hide love just as easily as they can hide distance. Stay till the end, because your soulmate is about to discover why those missed moments were never truly accidents. The final hidden piece came from someone who had nothing to gain by speaking. In a quiet conversation, they revealed something your soulmate had never considered. They explained that you had often asked about them without making it obvious. You never tried to interfere with their life, never demanded attention, and never asked anyone to deliver messages. Instead, you simply hoped they were doing well, even if they never knew you were asking. That simple truth struck your soulmate harder than any dramatic confession ever could. They realized that genuine care doesn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes it survives in silence, in restraint, and in the quiet hope that another person finds happiness, even from a distance. The hurt they once carried began to transform into gratitude, but one question still refused to leave their heart. If your feelings had remained so steady all this time, what had stopped you from taking that final step? As your soulmate searched for that answer, they made a decision that surprised even themselves. This time, they wouldn't rely on rumors, assumptions, or incomplete stories. They would seek the truth directly from you, no matter how uncomfortable that conversation might be. Yet just before they reached out, one last revelation appeared, one that neither of you expected. They discovered that the biggest obstacle between your hearts had never been betrayal, pride, or a lack of love. It had been fear, the quiet fear that speaking honestly might destroy the very connection both of you were desperately trying to protect. And now, with that fear finally beginning to fade, your soulmate stands on the edge of a choice that could rewrite everything. But before they take that step, they are about to learn one final truth about your heart. One so unexpected that it will leave them wondering why it took so long for both of you to see what had been there all along. What happened next wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet enough that most people would have missed its importance. Your soulmate finally understood that the truth which had hurt them wasn't the truth itself, it was the story they had built around it. Once that realization settled into their heart, the anger they had been carrying slowly disappeared. In its place came something far more difficult to face, regret. They wondered how different everything might have been if they had asked one honest question instead of believing silent assumptions. Memory after memory returned with new meaning. Every glance, every pause, every unfinished sentence now seemed to whisper the same message, that you had never stopped caring, you had simply struggled to express what your heart had been protecting all along. Don't skip, because the next moment changes not only what your soulmate believes about you, but also what they believe about themselves. With a calmer heart, your soulmate made one final decision. They would no longer search for answers through the voices of others. They wanted to hear your truth exactly as you lived it, not as someone else interpreted it. Before taking that step, they spent one last evening reflecting on every chapter of your connection. They realized that even during the hardest moments, you had never deliberately tried to cause pain. Instead, both of you had been walking through the same storm from opposite directions, unable to see how close you truly were. That realization brought unexpected peace. The hurt they once carried began transforming into compassion, and the distance between your hearts suddenly felt far smaller than it had only days before. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate is now ready to do the one thing they feared more than anything else, to be completely honest. As dawn approached, they quietly accepted a truth that changed everything. Love isn't tested only by joyful moments, it is tested by what survives confusion, silence, and misunderstanding. Your soulmate no longer wanted a perfect story, they wanted a real one, built on honesty instead of assumptions. They took a deep breath, knowing that the next conversation could either heal old wounds or reveal feelings that had remained hidden for far too long. But this time, they weren't afraid of the answer. They were only afraid of leaving another truth unspoken. And as they prepared to finally reach out, they discovered one last unexpected sign that your heart had been waiting for this exact moment too. A sign that suggested this story was never about losing each other, but about finding the courage to meet again with nothing left concealed. The moment finally arrived, and it felt nothing like your soulmate had imagined. There were no perfect words waiting to be spoken, no dramatic scene to erase every misunderstanding in an instant. Instead, there was a quiet pause filled with nervous breaths and honest emotion. For a few seconds, neither of you knew where to begin. Yet that silence no longer felt heavy. It felt hopeful. Your soulmate looked back on everything that had happened and realized that the greatest mistake had never been believing the wrong story, it had been believing that the story could never change. They understood that people are more than a single moment, a single rumor, or a single painful misunderstanding. Every unanswered question had led them here, to a place where the only thing left was the truth spoken directly from the heart. Stay till the end, because one final realization is about to reveal why this journey had to unfold exactly the way it did. As the conversation continued, something unexpected happened. Neither of you focused on proving who had been right or wrong. Instead, you both began sharing the feelings that had remained hidden for so long. Your soulmate admitted how deeply the discovery had wounded them, not because they wanted to blame you, but because they had feared losing someone who meant more than they had ever confessed. In return, you revealed how difficult it had been to carry the weight of being misunderstood while believing that speaking too soon might only make everything worse. For the first time, every missing piece found its place. The truth that once created distance now became the very reason trust began to grow stronger. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had finally found meaning. It had led both of you toward the honesty that neither of you had been brave enough to embrace before. Just as it seemed the journey had reached its end, your soulmate noticed one final detail that brought everything full circle. The lesson hidden beneath every twist wasn't about heartbreak at all. It was about discovering that genuine love survives only when both hearts are willing to replace assumptions with understanding. Looking into the future, they no longer saw a connection defined by fear or unanswered questions. They saw two people who had learned that the strongest bonds are not the ones that never face challenges, they are the ones that choose truth after every misunderstanding. With renewed hope, your soulmate took one confident step forward, knowing that whatever came next would be built on honesty instead of uncertainty. And in that quiet, unforgettable moment, they realized the painful truth they had once feared had actually become the beginning of the strongest chapter your story had ever known.